Take a deep breath in and let it fall gently out. Wherever you are in this moment, may this space become a sanctuary, a small holy place opening inside you. May your mind grow still, like water settling after a long wind. May your body soften, releasing the armor it learned to wear in the outer courts. And may your heart unfurl like a morning flower rising toward the first light. Spirit, we invite your breath between us, the breath that unites all things, the breath that turns strangers into witnesses, and witnesses into companions. Teach us to see each other again, not through fear, not through memory, not through projection, but through the quiet eyes of the sacred. As we step past the noise of the world and cross the threshold into the inner court, may we enter with reverence. May we listen with humility. May we speak with honesty. May we recognize the holy flame you tend within each of us. And with this next breath, may we whisper with our whole being, I am willing to go deeper. As always, you are not walking alone. There is a voice beside you, not above you demanding, not behind you pushing, but with you, matching your breath, matching your pace. I'm simply another traveler in the garden, another soul learning how to tend these delicate, holy spaces of relationship, the places where spirit meets us in the ordinary and the overwhelming, in the questions we whisper and the truths we're still afraid to speak. These talks are not instructions, they are invitations, doorways into remembrance, small openings in the veil, where something ancient in you recognizes something ancient in me. So, if something here touches you, pause. Let it breathe. Let it move through your chest like wind through leaves. Let it become prayer, not the kind you recite, but the kind that rises on its own, because your heart feels seen. That's the garden speaking between us, the quiet wisdom that grows when two souls dare to meet honestly, without armor, without performance, without rushing past the sacred. That's been waiting inside you all along. And as you listen, may you remember you are guided, you are accompanied, and nothing true within you will ever be lost. In the ancient tabernacle, the inner courts were not for everyone. They were for the consecrated, the Levites and the priests. those who were trustworthy enough to minister close to the holy. The Levites were the caretakers, carrying the sacred objects, maintaining the space, tending the lamp, washing the vessels, lifting what others could not bear. They guarded the atmosphere, ensuring nothing unready or unclean crossed a threshold it could not hold. The priests stepped even closer. Those who ministered at the altar, who discerned, blessed, and carried the weight of intercession. The inner courts were their domain, a place of quiet work, holy responsibility, and continual tending. And when we speak of relationships, those roles still exist, not literally, but energetically. Some people in your life are Levites, steady souls who know how to hold space, who can listen without judgment, who honor what is fragile in you. They keep your inner world clean, lit, and tended. Others step into priestly roles, those who can hold deeper wisdom with you, walk with you through your healing, who speak truth that lifts rather than wounds. And then there are those who are neither, not because they are lesser, but because they are outer court people, beautiful, valuable, beloved, not just meant to carry the weight of your inner altars. In the inner courts, you do not need crowds. You need caretakers. You need discerners. You need people who treat your healing as something sacred. Because in this space, Levites protect what is sacred, priests tend what is sacred, and you decide who is allowed near the sacred. Just as in the tabernacle, these roles must be earned, not assumed. Not everyone who wants access should have it. Not everyone who feels close is close. Not everyone who loves you knows how to love you well. The inner courts symbolize the mind, the realm where thought becomes awareness, where ego dissolves into true self, where knowing turns into wisdom. It is the place where you let someone see more of you, your doubts, your dreams, your wounds, your wonder. Here, conversations become confessions, silence becomes safe, the heart begins speaking a language words can only echo. But this space requires discernment. In the outer courts, you learn how people treat what is public. In the inner courts, you learn how they treat what is precious. And the same is true in reverse. You are not a Levite for everyone. You cannot minister to every heart. You cannot carry every story. The inner courts teach sacred responsibility, the wisdom of access, the holiness of boundaries, the truth that what you allow here shapes your mind, your healing, and your becoming. The inner courts correspond to what we call the psychic world, the bridge between the physical and the spiritual. Not separate, not higher, but between. This is the realm of emotion, intuition, memory, dreams, pattern, shadow, and integration. Here, the Levites within take their role. The parts of you willing to light the lamp, to keep it burning, to sit with discomfort, to face illusion, to cleanse the residue of old wounds, to tend the inner altar with honesty. In a healthy relationship, the other person has Levite qualities too. Not perfection, but willingness. This is where Jesus' relational model becomes stunningly clear. He had thousands in his outer courts, but only 12 entered the inner courts, those permitted to hear the deeper teachings, to witness his tears, to wrestle with the mysteries of the kingdom. Even then, there was still distance, still boundaries, still discernment. The inner courts were not a place of total exposure, they were a place of formation. This is where he trained, refined, taught, and challenged, where minds were stretched and hearts were softened. And in your relationships, the inner courts function the same way. This is where conversation deepens, trust forms, healing begins, shadows are acknowledged, patterns are broken, honesty blooms. The inner courts are where two minds begin to listen together for the voice of spirit. This is why American culture struggles. We mistake closeness for access, chemistry for connection, and vulnerability for oversharing. But the Levites remind us only the consecrated enter here, only the willing stay, only the humble grow. There comes a moment in every meaningful relationship when the outer courts stop being enough, when surface talk feels thin, when performance feels hollow, when pretending becomes exhausting. This is the moment of the inward turn. It is when we begin asking, who am I beneath the roles? Who are you beneath yours? What patterns are we carrying? What wounds are we repeating? What truths are we avoiding? The inner courts are where we stop seeking validation and start seeking truth, where we stop protecting our image and start protecting our connection, where we stop hiding behind logic and start listening through intuition. This is where the relationship moves from self to shared self, from I to we, without losing the sacredness of I. Let's go back to the story of Job. Growing up, most of us were taught the same version, that God allowed Job to be tested, and Job proved his loyalty by enduring suffering. But when you revisit Job through the lens of the inner courts, the story shifts. It becomes less about a cosmic experiment and more about what happens when everything that belongs to the outer courts is stripped away. Job's suffering didn't just test him, it stripped him of roles, of identity, of approval, of the life that insulated him from the deeper work of the soul. Everything that could distract him, everything that kept him from facing the truth of who he was, that was burned away. He was pushed not into punishment, but into the inner courts of his own being. And in that place, Job did exactly what the Levites do. He questioned, he wrestled, he lamented, he sifted through the noise of his friends' opinions.
He tended the lamp of his own awareness, and he kept his heart open in the very place where clarity is born. This is where the cleansing happens, not through fear, but through clarity. It's the space where we lay down every inherited belief about who that higher power must be and about who we must be to keep that higher power pleased. And when God finally spoke to Job, it wasn't the voice of a distant ruler speaking down to a servant. It was the voice within the veil, the breath that had always lived within him, reminding him of who he truly was. It was Job's moment of recognition, a remembering. Job didn't survive because he clung to a God outside himself. He survived because he remembered the God within himself. The breath placed in him at the beginning, the spark that no suffering could extinguish, the identity deeper than theology or fear. His endurance wasn't obedience, it was identity. It wasn't, God out there is testing me. It became, the God in me cannot be taken. This, this is the turning point of the inner courts. This is where the altar is cleared, where everything falls away, where we strip down to what is true, so the breath inside us can rise again. Job didn't just pass a test, he awakened within it. And that awakening, that return to the indwelling breath, is what prepares us to approach the veil. Because no one enters the Holy of Holies carrying an external image of God. What passes through the veil is only what is true. And this is why discernment in our relationships matter, because the inner courts are the place where pretense dies and authenticity is born, a space not everyone can enter, and not everyone should. There was another moment in my life, a quiet one, almost unremarkable on the surface, that I didn't understand until many years later. But now I see it as one of the clearest thresholds of my own inner courts. Every other year, my family would go on a cruise together. It was one of our traditions, full of laughter, drinks, dancing, and the kind of familiar patterns that make you feel like everything is fine, even when something inside you is shifting. On this particular year, it was just my parents, their friends, my daughters, and me. One evening, we were all sitting in the lounge. My daughters and I were at one table, and everyone else was at another, laughing, drinking, enjoying the ease of what we had always done together. At some point, my dad got up, walked over to me, and asked, "Are you drinking?" And something inside me sank. I told him no. I was preparing for my surrogacy journey, so I wasn't drinking at all. But the sadness that washed over me had nothing to do with the alcohol. It felt like something deeper, like a quiet knowing that I couldn't explain at the time. It felt like I was leaving something behind, like my dad was asking me to stay, not with his words, but with familiarity. And something in me knew I couldn't. It was as if part of my spirit whispered, this is where the path divides. Not because he was wrong and not because I was right, but because he was comfortable where he was. And I was being pulled inward. into a journey he wasn't willing or ready to take. For years, I didn't understand why that moment hurt, why something so small made my chest feel heavy, why a simple question felt like goodbye. But see, now I see it clearly. My spirit was stepping from the outer courts into the inner courts. And she already knew, long before my mind caught up, that my dad wouldn't be coming with me. This was the crossroads, the quiet moment when the familiar path ended and the inward path began. And as much as I wanted to carry my whole family with me, as much as I wanted to keep journeying together, this was one of those thresholds that could only be crossed alone. And the sadness wasn't rejection, it was recognition. Recognition that the next phase of my life, my healing, my becoming, my inner unfolding, would be a path walked in solitude, not punishment, not exile, just the natural separation that happens when one soul turns inward and another chooses to stay where they are. It was one of the first moments my spirit said, go deeper, even if you go alone. Let's go a couple of years further back to another example of the inner courts. I watched my older sister walk this path long before I knew I was on it too. We grew up in the same religious culture, a culture that taught us to perform holiness instead of embody it. Hypocrisy wasn't just tolerated, it was expected, necessary, normal. For years, we played the part. We learned how to smile with our mouths while our spirits collapsed inside of us. We learned how to gossip as prayer requests. We learned how to lie without calling it lying. But something in her began to shift. The fakeness that once felt familiar began to irritate her spirit. The gossip, the lying, the religious theater, it all became too heavy for her to carry. She started confronting dishonesty. She started telling the truth, even when it cost her. She began turning inward, listening to the voice that said, this is not who you are. And I watched, curious, quiet, studying her from the edge of my own uneasiness. I watched how that truth telling unsettled the family, how people mocked her boldness, how she was shunned, dismissed, labeled. And then came the moment that changed everything for me. See, one Sunday after church, we were gathered around the dining table for our usual after service lunch. It was the kind where the food was warm, but the conversation was cold. We slipped into our familiar patterns of gossip. Someone in the family made a comment about a woman's dress, how ridiculous it looked to us. And then my sister, she stopped eating, she lifted her head, and she said with this calm clarity, didn't you just tell her at church that her dress was beautiful? Why did you lie? That silence that fell over the table was sharper than any sermon I had ever heard. It slapped the room awake, I'm sure of it. At any rate, it slapped me awake. Something in my mind clicked. A small cracking open. A breath of truth I didn't know I'd been starving for. That moment drew me in. Her boldness unsettled something buried inside me, something that recognized truth long before I had the courage to live it. She moved her membership to a different church. She stopped participating in the family patterns, and eventually she walked away entirely. I didn't understand what she was doing. I didn't see that she was stepping into the inner courts long before I had the courage to do the same. But looking back now, I realized she became the first Levite I had ever witnessed up close. Someone willing to tend the flame of truth, even if it meant walking alone. Her journey showed me something essential. When someone follows truth inward, the outer courts shake, the masks fall away, the crowds thin. People who prefer the outer courts will fall away, not because they are bad, but because they are not ready. Her path became the silent permission slip for my own. She modeled what happens when spirit calls you deeper. You shed what cannot go with you. And sometimes that shedding looks like family. She became the first person in my life to show what it looks like to follow the inner call, even when it costs the familiar. Her courage planted a seed in me, a seed that would one day bloom into my own inward turning, my own walk toward the inner courts. And that is the beautiful tension of relationships. Some people walk ahead, some walk behind, but all of it belongs to the sacred spiral of becoming. This is the inner court, the place where everything falls away, the place the soul becomes honest. And in relationships, this is why discernment matters. Not everyone can meet you in the inner courts, and not everyone should. Here, we sit in sacred silence. We allow what is false to burn away. We discover what has always been. The inner courts are intimate, but not yet the Holy of Holies. There is still a veil. There is still mystery. There is still a place only spirit can touch. But the inner courts prepare us for that place in ourselves and in one another. Take one deep breath, feel it rise and fall like a tide returning home. Let your mind settle like sand in clear water. Slowly, gently, naturally, until what was clouded begins to shine again. Bring to your heart the people who stand in your inner courts, the ones who have earned the right to hear your unpolished thoughts, to witness your unfolding questions, to hold your healing with tenderness, with patience, with truth. These are not the crowds of the outer courts. These are the few who know how to stay, even when the light flickers, even when the path narrows, even when you are not easy to understand. Now ask yourself, who has shown themselves trustworthy, not in their words, but in their patterns? Who tends the lamp with you, steadying the flame when your hands shake, letting you steady theirs when the night is long? Who honors your boundaries as holy ground and guards their own with equal reverence, who meets you with honesty, humility, and presence, not demanding access, but receiving it as a gift. Let these questions rise. Let the answers come in their own time. The inner courts are sacred, not because they are perfect, but because they are true. Because what is spoken there is real. Because what is offered there is love, without performance, without entitlement, without control.
May you honor the few who meet you here. May you release the ones who cannot. And may you listen closely to the Levites within you, the wise, discerning guardians of your soul's sanctuary. They know who belongs. They know who does not. They know when it's time to open the gates and when it's time to gently close them. And now, may your thoughts grow quiet enough to hear the truth beneath them. May your mind become a sanctuary, cleansed of old noise, prepared for new wisdom. May those who enter your inner courts walk gently, listen deeply, and speak with love. And may the lamp of understanding burn bright within you until the veil begins to open.